Welcome to the Pantheon.Plus Rewind.
Hey everyone, what's up? Welcome to episode 30 of the Rewind. Thank you so much for stopping by and hanging out with us today, because everyone needs their weekly fix of Pantheon Rise of the Fallen talks. So whether you are here in chat for the YouTube premiere or you're driving around and listening on the go or whatever you're up to, it is that time of the week where we're going to catch up on everything that's going on in the Pantheon community. And man, it was a very, very busy week and there's a lot going on. So here to help me break it all down, as always, is my pocket rogue and my fantastic co-host, Minus. Dude, what is shaking?
Not much, man. Very excited. Episode 30. That's a pretty big deal, right? 30.
Episode 30. Yeah, man. I looked at it. It's like, that's almost more than 6 months we've been doing this.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. It's awesome. It's exciting to do. I like how you put your pocket rogue there. I remember you running out with the orc on you in the video we just had and saying, "There's an orc on me." And I was like, got it.
Yeah.
And then I remember you standing behind me trying to pretend you were a rogue sneaking into a cave and pulling aggro. But hey, other than that.
You know what? I wanted to make it a little bit entertaining, and nobody wants to see you just sneak in. They want to see some danger. They want to see some jeopardy, right? So I figured I'd give the folks what they're looking for there. But
look at that, yeah. Theric, always a man of the people.
That's right. I'm here for you, the audience, not for you, Minus. All right, are you ready to go? Let's go.
Let's go.
This week in Visionary Realms news and notes.
All right, so a lot happened in official / important VR stuff, and we're going to start with what we were kind of just talking about, the fact that we had the PA5 approved Rogue gameplay footage. I hope you guys have gotten a chance to check that out there, and if you haven't, please let us know what you think if you get a chance to. Feedback's huge on this, as being one of the first PA5 videos out there. I think it's important not just for us, but for VR, for the other content creators that we hope get a chance to do this, that they're able to sort of get some advice on what did you like about our content? What would you like to see more of? So that type of feedback is really important as we try to, make sure that all the fans out there get to see a little bit more Pantheon as, VR is trying to up their communication and everything. So please give your feedback and let us know. So with that being said, I just do want to thank them again, because if it wasn't for you guys, we wouldn't be able to have done this, and VR wouldn't have opened up, and lifted the NDA a little bit for us. So that said, one of the things that I've been doing a lot of is trying to really stay in the conversation around the YouTube comments on Twitter, comments on Reddit, just trying to answer what I can, what I'm allowed to answer, to kind of clarify any questions or concerns people might have. And while we were watching the video, Joppa was actually in there talking about some of the things that people were asking about. So we wanted to share some of those comments with you today, in case you missed the live streamed in the live chat when we did the premiere on YouTube. And the first topic that he really dug into was around rogue crowd control, which was shown quite a bit in the footage with me doing the smoke trick and locking stuff down. And some people were like, wow, that's really cool. And some people were like, wow, that's really overpowered. So on that topic, here's what Chris had to say. First, he said, quote, "Rogue CC will still undergo several tuning passes as well. I agree it is too powerful in its current state." His next quote said, quote, "Takes him almost completely out of DPS mode, however, to focus CC." So what he was trying to say is like, listen, this is a DPS class that's there to, get through combat, to push time to kill, to help in case ads come in. And when a rogue is CCing like this, they're almost completely removed from combat itself. So he's saying there is a trade-off, is kind of what he's saying. Like, we do want Rogue CC to be powerful, and understand that it is at the trade-off of being able to do your main role, which I thought was an important thing.
Yeah, it really is, because it's balancing, right? It's saying, look, your primary thing is DPS. You are going to do a lot of damage, but if you need to be in that CC role, you have to give that up. And we saw a lot of people commenting saying, wow, OP, crowd control, what about the enchanter? I mean, it's a credit actually to you as a player in terms of what you were doing, that you were doing it so well that people are like, wow, this needs to be nerfed. But, then you keep in mind that this is pre-alpha, right? And of course there's a lot of tuning to be done, like Joppa said. So, but it was certainly interesting to see that perspective.
Yeah, the other side of it too, in case because I know some people kind of skipping around the video. At the very beginning of the video, we talked about the fact that we were given the right to be able to put mastery into our abilities. We didn't have to earn it; we just had unlimited mastery, so we could try it out, test them out. So one of the things that Chris quoted here as well was the following. He said, "His Shadow Walk has max mastery, which reduces movement speed penalty from 40 to 10%." Now, the other piece that I'm going to add on to that comment is the reason that I was able to stay stealth and continuously smoke, trick, or throw traps out is because the last mastery point in Shadow Walk allowed me to gain opportunity, because opportunity is what was the cost of using the CC abilities. So because I had that maxed, it allowed me to be a little stronger. And to quote Chris again here, he said, "It'll take quite a while before you have that enough mastery to upgrade stealth to that point." So keep in mind, it was somewhere around 14 mastery points just to get to that last part. And, mastery is not going to be something you're gaining super quickly. So there's a lot of different factors put in. And I think the biggest thing is that, when we get into balancing as a whole, Joppa had a really good quote about it. And I'll read this here. He says, it's extremely iterative. I can't say that word. It's extremely iterative, and we don't want to turn any knobs too hard until all the factors are in play, which is why you will see some power disparities here and there along the way. However, he says, but we've got a beat on them. So they're aware of these things that need to be looked at, slightly changed, but they also have this idea of, what they want classes to be able to do in these difficult situations. So I think it's important.
Yeah, it was really interesting too. I mean, you look at the context of it, right? And look at us all having these maxed out mastery abilities with their masteries maxed out, and fighting in an area like we were with, I think they were level 10 to 15 sort of mobs. It just, you realize that we were having some difficulty. I mean, it wasn't careless play. We were having to be careful. We had to be careful. Even with all our masteries maxed out, we still had to be careful. So you sort of look at it from a relative standpoint and realize, this is going to be a difficult game, and this is still with a lot of tuning to go. So, I like the way he put it about, turning the knobs and dials sort of as a way of looking at it. I think that's a good way of putting it. So, yeah.
So it's extremely important, in my opinion, to remember that, balancing is going to come as core systems are working as intended and working together as expected. I fully expect, without any inside knowledge, this isn't me with anything I know, that you're probably going to see some sort of diminishing returns on ability like Smoke Trick. And also, like I said before, it probably is going to take a rogue pretty considerable amount of time to achieve that amount of mastery points needed to get Shadow Walk to the state I had it in. Not to mention all the other abilities I had upgraded. So you're gonna have to make a lot of decisions on how you spend your mastery. With seeing how it went that way. I'm a big stealth fan, so it's very possible my first 14 points will be in Shadow Walk if I can even do that. But at the same time, what if you want to upgrade your backstab? What if you want to upgrade, different abilities you have? You have to make that decision. So it's kind of dry. Yeah, your traps you might not have had the option to have your traps as high as they were, or your smoke trick, because you chose to put it in stealth instead, right? So again, you were seeing the ultimate version of what that class's abilities might look like, right? At level 10.
At level 10, right? Which is, of course, nobody's going to have all those by level 10, I wouldn't think, but.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely not. So I just wanted to take one last moment before we wrap up this section to say, I really wanted to thank VR for allowing us to show this footage. And I can't stress enough how much fun it was to not only experience, but put this content out there for everyone to check out. So once again, please, feedback. We want to know what you liked. If we have an opportunity to do something like this in the future, we want to make it even more valuable for you. And also, like I said, it'll also help any of the other content creators who get this opportunity, which I'm also really excited to see what people like Nathan and Basgrim do if they're given the ability to show some of this content. So it's really exciting to me.
Yeah, I can't wait to see that too. That's different perspectives, different takes, and everybody's got a different approach to it. And I would just say as well, before we finish up on this piece, that go check out the comments on the video. There's I think there's almost 85, 87 comments or something like that right now. There's a lot of conversation going on and some really interesting points. And I've enjoyed sort of just following it up, because they're all people who know what they're looking at and some really good insights, I think. So go check out the comments there.
Yeah. So next up on the VR news and notes here is the developer stream, which featured Jimmy Lane. I love this. Like, I love this video. So on Thursday night, we were treated to the monthly Visionary Realms developer stream, and we got a really in-depth look at the world building with environmental artist Jimmy, he goes by Torque Lane. In this he showed some of the tools that he's using to populate the world with assets and how they've changed from pre-made assets into custom assets and what it means for future development. We were also able to get a glimpse of world size and how they've gone through expanding the world by creating more space within zones, which, properly spaced out, areas or hubs, which were pretty important. It was a shocking at times to hear the level of detail he was going into. And sometimes it was like a high level. But because he was accompanying this high-level speak with a visual representation, it meant even someone like me could easily follow along. And I thought that was really important. What I really gathered out of this was the fact that they were able to now move much more rapid pace with programs like Houdini and how the world is being designed first in the gray box state. They showed an area in Avenger's Pass, which they expanded the zone greatly. And I was just blown away when they showed how they made it bigger. And Jimmy basically said it only took 30 minutes to add that section in. You could just hear his passion. We talk about this a lot with Joppa, like hearing his passion during the entirety of the stream was the same for Jimmy. And it was really good to look at some of the design elements you don't typically get to see in game development. And I got to tell you, I walked away feeling really good at, number one, the pace and how big they're going to be able to make this world. So, Theric, I've said my piece on this. We talked about it on Pantheon.Plus, but what else did you want to add, and how did you feel after?
What's interesting, I just sort of thought about now is talking about the video a second ago and now talking about this developer stream. If you put those two things together and you watch our video of gameplay and then you go back and you watch how Jimmy Lane was talking about building that world, you can see it in action. You can put theory on, into practice, so to speak. Because all the things he was saying in that video, and he talked, like you said, talked about the world building, talked about sort of the geomorphing ability that the tools he has gives him, and then go look at that video and you see it right there. It's so cool. I think I was saying just on Pantheon.Plus that when we're in the world and we're running around, we as players with sort of boots on the ground, so to speak, look at the world and think, man, this must take forever. Like, this must be the hardest part to design this world and this cave. And but you realize, when you've got a designer like Torque and tools like he has, I'm not saying it's easy. He makes it look easy because he's good at his job. But you realize that it's this isn't the real grind that maybe some of the underlying mechanics and functions when you're talking about skills and some of the things that make the world sort of work the way it should. That's where the real challenges lie. And this world building is his, when he talked about it on the stream, it's almost like this is the fun part, this is the love of what he does. And that comes across in his voice and the way he talked about it, but you can see why, right? So I think it's just kind of interesting when you compare the two sort of aspects, the two things together now.
Yeah, great point. Great point for sure. And I think that it's, we had the developers newsletter that talked about communication getting better. And since then, we've heard a lot more from Ben Dean. He's been more active on the forums. We get to show off this PA5 footage. We see the interview with Nathan. We have Torque showing this in-depth, deep look. They're following it up. I know it's only a month, but this month has been a pretty huge step forward in clarity and communication and accessibility, I think, for the community. And I'm excited to see where that goes as we continue to build on that.
I couldn't agree more. It's been absolutely noticeable, and kudos to them, and cheers. I really hope that is the way forward.
For sure. So we wouldn't have a normal VR section here without at least getting into one Twitter topic. And the debate this week was, what is the most important to you when you're looking to upgrade your gear? Appearance, stats, bonuses, passives, etc. So Princess Ruto said, truthfully, I've had my character suffer because I like the way a mage robe looked and nothing else looked as good until much later. So her damage suffered because the armor upgrades were ugly. So appearance is better than stats if better stat armor looks like a troll's used loincloth.
That's so funny. That's such like the essence of sacrificing stats for looks, right? Like I think I know what she's saying, like the robes, they're always the most detailed with like stitching and stuff. And then you get armor that looks like it was beaten in it's a piece of tin beaten over an anvil for an hour and you throw it out. It's like, why would you want to wear that?
There were many times in EverQuest where I wore like a sweet looking robe and I didn't care.
Yeah. Oh, there were tons of sweet looking robes in EverQuest. I know, right? Exactly.
JJ says stats are king in any RPG. Getting stronger is the purest form of progression. On use and passives are nice, but having too many that can severely disrupt playstyle. When your rotation becomes clicking your gear in the right order instead of your abilities, that becomes a problem.
That's true.
Jim says, I play a monk as a main. I want him to look like a monk, not just any guy in cloth or leather. I greatly prefer outfits to have some signals, color, or example as to my skill level. Drax says, I have a special place in my heart for set bonuses. I love collecting sets and having the power that these sets increase as I get each new piece. And Nathaniel James actually responded to him, said, set bonuses always remind me of early games like Diablo or D2, so I would agree that they are pretty awesome.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of sets and set bonuses. I think that they are super cool. I can't think of a game that's had them that I disliked.
Yeah. Odd Bunny says, I like good gear, but set bonuses make the gear go pop. Finished my Diablo Necromancer tune for this season, and while legendary pieces are all fine and good, getting the armor / gem set went from heavy hitting to I look at it and it melts.
Exactly. Diablo is the king of set armor. Absolutely. And he's right. Like every season that they do, and they add those new like sets, it's like you just get more and more over the top.
And it's fun. It's fun to be powerful, right?
It is fun to be powerful. Exactly.
Thwal says some sort of stat improvements. Could care less what my tune looks like. Dan Scholes says, I want it to be easily identifiable as an upgrade so I can potentially equip on the go. Also, if my class is in chain, plate, leather, etc., I want the item to actually look like those and not make my armor look all out of whack. That's a good point.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Eldenin says, anything that helps my character survive and contribute to the success of a group or guild is always important. With that said, allowing players to dye or reforge gear should be an out-of-the-box feature. No game should force players to make that kind of choice, in my opinion. Let's see. Jorgen Wickstrom says, short answer, yes. Long answer, he puts in order passive, then stats, then bonuses, then clickies, and then a distant appearance.
Wow.
He says, I would love a system with appearance armor so you don't look like a patchwork clown, unless that's your thing. But I would never pass on an upgrade because it looked misplaced or ugly.
That's sacrificing dignity for the good of the group.
Trixton says, choice. I like gear that can affect skills as well as stats. So I may have a passive dodge skill as a rogue. I could get gear when I dodge. I could get gear that when I dodge, I get an attack bonus. So that will X many seconds after for a more DPS build. Or gear that when I dodge, I get an automatic success on my next one. So he likes those like passive effects that can increase other things that, how you play and like give you a period of burst or something. I definitely like that. Yeah,
we're going to talk about that a little later actually in the show. There's a question that relates to that. It's a good point.
Nice little leeway, little foreshadowing. Rebecca S says stats over looks doesn't do any good looking pretty if you're dead on the floor all the time. Well, Ronick looks pretty. So
I don't know. I've seen some pretty nice looking corpses. I mean, if you're splayed out in that, sort of chalk outline, sort of look on the floor.
Poor Ronick. Nicole says definitely stats. You have to be able to keep up with the curve to progress. Personally, I like my armor to match and to be able to customize my appearance. But if I can't kill what I'm trying to kill because my stats just aren't up to par, then it's a new moot point. Mm-hmm. And then Anwene says to upgrade stats, but to provide a more unique playing experience and character, that I'm going with passive procs and appearance all day. So
nice.
A lot of different takes there. A lot of different takes.
Yeah, everybody had some different order on things.
So here's my thoughts. I have to say that one of the most enjoyable things about WoW to me was that like the raid tier set bonuses. And when you would complete your set and then all of a sudden your play style would change wildly and you'd have to almost learn how to play your class again. I love that, by the way. It didn't take new abilities to be added, but instead enhancing lesser used abilities or changing how an ability functions altogether to all of a sudden open up a new world of possibilities. I love this feeling of reinventing yourself. I don't like to figure out how to play a class and then just do the same thing for a long period of time. Now, I know that different fights and mechanics may make you change things from time to time, but set bonuses completely alter play style and are such a breath of fresh air. And let's be honest, usually a set looks pretty cool, or at least it all matches. So your character looks complete. So there's that added bonus of looking good. To add to that, since set bonuses are so important, the stats on the items are what they are. You know, you'll take what they give you for those set bonuses. And I like that as well. Because then you can use like non-set items to increase stats where needed and kind of build around that set another way, which now all of a sudden you get a new set of gear and now you want to change out your other gear. So now there becomes this fun mini game of like, okay, well now I need this item I didn't need before. Let's go farm it. It's just this great replayability and reinventing yourself as a character. And I love that. I love that challenge to be able to adapt. Of course, as much as I love appearance, I'll always go for what makes my character stronger so that I can benefit my group or guild to the best of my ability. But that's why transmog is so important. So I'll leave it with that. And Theric, what do you think?
Oh man, you had some really good points there, and the set bonuses thing I talked about. I think what it comes down to as well is just a refresh on your character, right? Like you do want to do upgrades, but it's also about refreshing how your character and looks. Obviously, that speaks to looks and appearance more than anything, because after a while you just get sick of looking at the same character over and over again, and you want to keep it fresh and you want to look different. So I might chase down an item just for its appearance, even if I know it's a downgrade. I might chase it down anyway, just because I want that. I want to change how I look. And I think that's really important in a lot of ways, to have that carrot on that stick, so that you want to look a certain way. You better go out and find this thing so you can look that way. So, I'm not one of the, again, I'm not a stats guy necessarily. I want to be good. I want to have stats that help my abilities, and I want to be, competent with my class, obviously, but that's not my primary motivator is stats. I'm about like having a good look and mixing it with reasonable stats. So I will not sacrifice looks for stats. Usually I will, I need that. I need the confidence, the dignity of my beautiful, matching gear, or even just to change it up. Like I said, it's just about refreshing it. It's like your desktop on your computer. You got to change that wallpaper once in a while, because you get sick of looking at the same thing. So yeah, that's my motivation, I think.
I'm shocked by that. I would have never thought that you were more appearance driven. Not more, but that you were appearance driven like that. Yeah.
I would say
you
it's
don't
like
want transmog.
60-40. No, I've softened on the transmog thing. Remember, I came at it, started out in a place of no, absolutely not. You see what you are, what you see, that kind of thing. But I've softened on it as we've talked about it. And I think that's actually a sort of a thing that, more people should do, is sort of like talk it out and figure out sort of, there may be aspects you haven't seen. And I've discovered some aspects of it that I actually really like. And I think will be good for the health of Pantheon long term. So I am softening, and there's like, but it's still like, it's not 100%. Like it's like a 60-40, I would say. I want a good look, but I also want good stats, abilities. Those passives and things that like change the function of an item or of your skills and your abilities, I think are super important. That's what you were talking about there. So yeah. I can agree with a lot of that.
Awesome. All right. Well, that's it for this week's VR news and notes.
When the Pantheon community speaks, we listen. So let's dig into the forums and fan projects to see what the discussion's all about. Okay, so this week, our topic of discussion comes from none other than VR's creative director, Joppa Perkins, amongst other roles that he has. And on Twitter, he was thinking about the concept of player prestige. So he specifically asked, what makes you feel powerful in an MMORPG? What aspects of your character do you enjoy showing off? It's a little similar to what we just talked about, but it's more about like the psychology of it. Like what is it that gets to the core of you as a player wanting to, what do you want to be? What do you want to show off? What makes you feel powerful? And it's one I've found myself wondering about quite a bit as well. So people are pretty different in a lot of different ways. And I'm interested in seeing what those responses to were. And before we get to this, I got to thank you, Minus, for letting me dive into this one on the Twitter. The Twitter is usually your universe. And I messaged you in the week. I was like, dude, I need a good topic. Can I take this Twitter topic? And you were very gracious about it.
With everything going on, I should be thanking you. Like, yes, thank God. Please take some of it.
Yeah. So this is from Twitter. These responses are from Twitter. And before we get to them, one more note is that, gear, like we talked about, was probably the most common answer for sure. So I tried to find some different things. I got a couple in here about the gear, but I also tried to look for some different takes on it as well. The first one comes from our friend Loxless. He said, I felt pretty powerful dueling on my Shadow Knight. You have to rely on others while you're grouping and raiding, but in dueling, you can only rely on yourself. So that's kind of cool, thinking about it from a one-on-one standpoint. That's what makes him feel powerful in an MMO. And our good friend Militus said, my ability to buff and support other players makes me feel incredibly powerful. Enabling other success equals me showing off. So that doesn't surprise me coming from Militus. What we know about him, he's very, very, what's the word I'm looking for? Altruistic, I guess you would say, and enjoys seeing other people succeed. So yeah, so I was happy to see that from him. Toadman Bear said, I still remember the first time seeing other players with their epics standing in East Common's tunnel. As much as I would like to say it's character power, it really is gear that makes you feel godlike.
I agree with that. I do.
Yeah,
I do.
Man. I know. And lots of people said the same thing. One of the responses to him actually was Paul Beecham. He said, yeah, for sure. I feel like they were also the first weapons to have actual graphical things going on. Like the Ranger epic had some electricity around it. And you had to actually slash Anon because everyone loved it so much. It's totally true. I don't know if you had that too, but once I got my epics and I got my, the Ivy armor from the plains, I had to go Anon a little bit more than I used to because people would come up and say like, oh, that's, and I want that. But again, at some point you just got to turn it off. You don't want to be bothered or something like that. So I agree. Bobo on Twitter said, most powerful, others knowing they have no worry of dying with my heals. So that's kind of cool. When people are confident in you, that's makes you feel powerful. Disposalist, he always has a good take on this. He said, interesting that you place prestige alongside power and showing off in terms of the way Joppa framed the question. He says, I prefer it comes to being known as a friendly and sociable, useful and skillful when people associate my name with good deeds. And I agree with that. I like that perspective. Of course, that's, we've had these discussions before. That's sort of the kumbaya, hands around the fire, singing a song sort of approach. And that's part of me is like that, so I part of me agrees with that too. Next up was Seraphita. And they said, I really enjoy taking certain spells and specs or builds that are thought of to be unviable and not only coming up with a way to make it work, but outperforming others. The reaction is very satisfying. I bet you are like 100% on that. I've heard you talk about that before, right? That probably speaks to you. Eh? Yeah.
In BFA, the warrior tank was known as the worst tank, and it wasn't close. Warrior was drastically the bottom tier tank. It was very high skill level for, the same type of reward you would get for playing like a Death Knight with basically no work whatsoever. Yeah. So the warrior was very difficult to play at the beginning of BFA. And there were a lot of people that said, don't even take a warrior with you to the first raid because they can't do some of the fights. And it was funny because that's when a lot of like the WoW Plus stuff started that led into this Pantheon.Plus idea. Like the root ideas that came from WoW Plus was a lot around the fact that I was using abilities that people were like, this ability is useless. But when you would combo it and use it correctly and gear correctly, it literally would help me get through boss fights that people said I couldn't do. And I did clear it with the warrior, completely cleared heroic. People said you couldn't do it. It wasn't efficient. We did it. So it was just interesting. I do love that. I do. And people would be like, I'd do a pickup group and go do like a Mythic Plus or something. And they'd be like, warrior, you sure you're okay? Like, yeah. And then they see me toss down like the AoE blade effect. I can't remember what it's called. And they're like, why did you take that? That's the worst ability ever. And then all of a sudden, we're pulling multiple mobs. I'm taking them down. They're like, that's weird. Yeah. Because there's just all these abilities that people don't see. So that is a huge point. I love doing things that people think you can't do because if you put your mind to it and you get the right stats, a lot of times you can make things work. It's not always easy, but you can make things work.
Oh man, I relate to that so much with my Hearthstone days because that was where I got the most satisfaction. I would play crazy off meta decks that nobody played, and I didn't care if I had more satisfaction out of beating somebody at rank 17 with a. I was big on Malagos Rogue for a long time. I loved Malagos Rogue, and I also loved Control Warrior. And Control Warrior always has been up and down. But sometimes it was not good. And beating somebody at rank 17 who's playing like the tier 1, top of the meta deck with a off meta deck was excellent. I'd rather do that than get to legend, and there was a lot of times. That's probably why it took me forever to get to legend because I liked that so much, but whatever. So next up was Glenn Smith. He said, I think it's the reputation that makes a player powerful. When you attempt to start a pug on a slow day and the group forms quickly because you're a strong healer, tank, or whatever, you have the reputation on that server. That's legitimate power, and that's not artificial. It's a good point.
Great point.
Yeah. Exosirus said, I can't quite remember, but I think you guys mentioned in a video that the towns people act differently towards you. So when you complete something of great prestige and the environment or NPCs react differently around you, at least in certain areas, that's what he finds powerful. And that's a great point too. When the world changes to your accomplishments. So he also says titles as well. He likes titles.
Titles are nice. I do like titles.
I have mixed feelings about titles. Sometimes I love them. Sometimes I hate them.
Especially when you can't get a title anymore and you have one.
That's true. It's that rarity of it. Yeah, maybe. JD Nickel says, what makes me feel powerful in an MMORPG is finding ways to use my tools to solve a problem. When I use Harmony and Root as a ranger in EQ because we couldn't find any enchanter and I'd play CC, that made me feel very powerful within my group. This goes back to what we saw in the gameplay video that we did, like that's using your skills in a different way to fulfill a role. That's pretty cool stuff. Raquel Verissimo said, being the player with the largest bounty on your head. So this is coming from a PvP server, which probably is interesting because I don't have any experience. I never played on a PvP server, but being the one with the most notorious person on a PvP, I'd imagine that would be a pretty powerful feeling. Apity said, I agree about having or wearing the rare gear and being seen with it. Having a rare drop is one thing, but having an epic that took a ton of effort and coordination to get is another. Eventually, as the game ages, it's less special, but early on, it feels pretty powerful. Untamed Engineer said, hard to get items, abilities, and other things that are difficult to collect and show off the time and skill. I agree with that. DM Harms, also known as Desrin, said, honestly, in EQ2, I found myself busting out random old clickies, activatable items from long past events. Yeah, this is pretty good. Yeah. From long past events, quests, or raids. I always had a stack of snowballs, fireworks to randomly bust out. Something about clickies just tickles me.
I'll stop you on that because it's funny. So back when Karazhan came out, which was ages, BC, there were these stupid things that dropped randomly. They're gray items. It was called a haunted memento. And you'd set it in your inventory and then this ghost would every once in a while appear and start following you. From the haunted memento. And it just sat in your inventory. It's just gray items. They dropped a lot, nothing special. So I guess at some point I banked a bunch of them, not even for no reason. I think I was just cleaning up my inventory and I had a bunch on me and I didn't want to go sell or destroy them. So I just threw them in my bank. Fast forward to BFA, which was 10 plus years later, I was cleaning out my inventories. That's how bad some of my banks are. I was cleaning out and I'm like, what are these? Why do I have this? And I was like, oh, this is the one where the ghost follows you. So I got really excited, right? So I put it on and the ghost still worked. And then I realized that Kara had been changed. So that didn't drop anymore. I'm like, huh. So I looked on the auction house and it was worth hundreds of thousands of platinum. It was insane how much it was worth. And I was like, oh my God. And I had 6 of them, put them right on, as much as I love having cool little items, put them right on the auction house and sold all those real quick.
They had to go. That's funny. Well, that tells you what this whole is all about, right? Those do make people feel powerful. There's a demand for that. Isn't that crazy? I know this makes me think of Guild Wars a lot because they love their clickies in Guild Wars, snowballs and all kinds of crazy things that go off. And I've got my Ranger in Guild Wars 2 that's probably got a million things just like you talked about on them because I haven't played it forever. But yeah, they can. That's why they're in demand. Yeah, it's interesting. And then the last response to the question was from Karo Kupo, and they said notoriety, being the guy who's known for this one thing within the community, the guy who always ganks the zone, or maybe the guy who gives free bags to newbies, or when others tell you to whisper this person for pugs. So really, the reality in the minds of others is huge. So I really like that point. I'm going to get on that in a second here. And so my perspective is, like I said, a different range of things that make people feel prestigious in an MMO. And what prestige means is, like, to me, it means there's something about your character that's unique, or at least like a limited number of other people can actually possess. It's part of your character's identity, and it has to be exclusive, and it has to make people stop and sort of notice you. So of course I think about gear, but I also think about, in the responses, people saying, one of the things we see in the community all the time is, I want this to be associated with my character, whatever X is. And a lot of people, like, we hear that I'm top X percent on my server. That has appeal because by definition, only a limited number of people can hold that position. But like Disposal has said, it doesn't have to be about power. It can be about reputation. Remember when you knew who the heroes and the villains on the server were by name? I think that's what Karo Kupo in the last response is saying. Notoriety. It's huge. I think that's pretty close to the essence of the question. I want something, for me personally, I want something that leads to me being, respected or renowned or even just known, like anything. It doesn't really have to be about power. I think prestige is one of the hardest things to actually obtain because it's one of the most rewarding. And in a real MMO, reputation doesn't come easy. You've got thousands of other players going around, but it's definitely one of the most rewarding. So if I can get that, great. Now, if I can't, give me a weapon with a great particle effect, some uber DPS, and I'll live with that being what makes me feel powerful. So what do you think about all this, Minus? What's your belief?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I think being somebody, for me, that, is community friendly, you can come to me with questions, tries to actually give people answers, to have a guild that's respected, but doesn't have to be a top guild, just respected, teach people how to play, be approachable. That's kind of where I was before I was a content creator. That's what really in WoW, what I was happy with being, and, being a strong raid leader and people knowing that, like, I knew my stuff, and we had a really good organization. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting now as a content creator, there's, and I'm not saying like I'm special, but as a content creator, we put ourselves out there. So people know us that watch the videos, right? Like it's, what we say is important, because if we say it and then we don't live by it, there's that lack of, integrity, I guess you'd almost say, like in what we're saying. So that's one of the reasons why when we make content and the way we talk the way we do and the way we really stand by our opinions and stuff is because it's easier to be ourselves and then be able to represent that in game or represent that when we talk to people than it is to try to be a character, then remember like, oh, this is what we have to be, right? So it's very interesting because like all the things that I talked about being in WoW and a lot of the things you talked about, like, are people going to know us? We have an advantage. And again, I'm not trying to say this like we're better than anybody, but we have an advantage because for 2 years we've been putting content out. The disadvantage is that there's also a lot of people that don't like us. So
you take the good with the bad.
Yeah. And so, there's that notoriety piece. There's already people on servers like, oh, whatever server Minus is on, I don't want to be on it. All right. Well, sorry, man. Like, I hope I don't ruin your experience, but it's interesting because it's a give and a take, and there's a lot of responsibility in that. If people are going to look forward to playing with us and seeing us representing our viewpoints that we do here and being the kind of people we are on a podcast, there's a lot of pressure to make sure that we do that in game and represent the community well in game too. And then obviously the people that don't want to have anything to do with us, that they can go play on a different server and never have to be bothered by us again. So
and that's the thing, right? You can only, I'm too old to worry about that stuff anymore, in terms of like, trying to project some sort of, image or doing something that's untrue to my character, I don't have the memory for it, nor do I have the inclination for it.
That's such a true point. Like I can't remember. I always tell people like, don't lie, because it's hard to remember what you lied about than to just be honest and get in trouble 100%. For it.
That's why my marriage has been successful. I can't remember anything. So it's always honest, right? I'm just always honest about things.
And that's why my marriage didn't work, because I was always honest.
Wow. Okay. Wow. We're getting deep here, man. This is, I like where this is going. It's funny though. It's funny. It is about power, and again, it's a silly phrase, but with with power comes responsibility. So if we're gonna do a podcast, if we're gonna create content, we have a responsibility to be ourselves and be genuine. So that's well said. I like what you said there. So So from there, we'll finish up the community discussions part with one quick note. But man, I talked last week about fan fiction from Crowsinger, and they have another piece they've already finished. And if you check out the forums, you'll see the Orphan Druid that we talked about last week. But there's a new one called The Sword of Seregeral. I had to practice that a few times. I knew I was going to screw that up, but I actually got that. I'm pretty proud. So I shouldn't have said anything. But anyway, there's 4 parts to this story, and they are posted on the fan fiction forums at Pantheon.Plus. So go over there and check them out. I've read half of the first chapter, so I can't really say too much about what the story is. I can't give any teasers or anything like that. But the last one, Orphan Druid, was really good. So I definitely think this one's going to be great too. So good job.
We should have you reach out to them and see if they want to put them on Pantheon.Plus, because we're about to talk about a new feature we just got added.
Wow, great segue. Absolutely. I will, man. That'll be great. That's a good idea for next week for sure. So let's go right into it. That's it for this week's community discussions.
Let's talk content creator updates and new additions to Pantheon.Plus.
All right, so let's jump into updates on Pantheon.Plus. There's a lot to talk about here, not only in the content creator section, but with some news we're finally able to announce and be excited about. So first, the added content on Pantheon.Plus, there's a lot. Nathan Napalm put out a review of the Druid class, and Nathan is an expert at RPGs, like games, tabletop, console. So it's fun to listen to him talk. Like when he looks at a page of like abilities and kind of talks about how a class will play and what he knows, and then adding in all his experience. It's a lot of fun to listen to Nathan talk about how he thinks a class will play. So he did the Druid class. Check that out if you're into that class, or you just like listening to Nathan Napalm break stuff down. It's really good. The Voices of Terminus spinoff show, fully geared episode 2 launched, where the host Plate talked about dispositions with community member Erica, who's been a longtime member of the Pantheon.Plus community as well. So pretty exciting stuff.
My better half. He is the other half of Therakai. So
he is.
Go check it out.
He also had a Hurley hat on, and I called him out on it. I said, "Hurley hat, huh?" Because I thought you'd like that. I laughed at that. Pretty good. All right. Basgrim put out a watch party for the developers stream, where you can not only catch info from the stream itself, but sort of get Basgrim's take on the information shared. He also went a little longer with this one. He goes into some extra detail following the stream, starts to kind of link some of the stuff towards details from the newsletter, and kind of talks about his experiences in making board games, which is something he loves to do, and how like that plays into like some of his thought process on how he analyzes different aspects of development. So pretty interesting stream. Like I said, a little longer than he normally does. So there's a lot of stuff after the actual stream, not just the reactions. So it's good stuff. So of course we also added the developers stream on Pantheon.Plus. So if you want to watch the full video, you can go to Pantheon.Plus, check it out. You can check it out on VR's Twitter, check it out on PantheonMMO.com. But if you like it in one neat place, we have it on Pantheon.Plus. So finally for us, we put out 2 videos. First, Pantheon+ U, which we've talked a little bit about today, Theric, where we kind of recap the developers stream immediately following, breaking down everything we saw, and invited a lot of community members live on the air to discuss their thoughts. And I thought that the community stuff was awesome this week. Like we had some really passionate members of the community that were talking about different things they saw and what they were excited for. And I think they really stole the show for the last Pantheon+ U we had. So check it out if you like to hear various opinions, not just Theric and I. So
yeah, exactly. It was good. It was a good one with the green room.
Yeah, and I'm not going to go into a ton of detail because we already talked about at the beginning of the show, but our Rogue gameplay video from Pre-Alpha 5 is also on Pantheon.Plus. You can check it out there. Check it out on our YouTube, on Twitter. We're putting it everywhere. It's a pretty important video for us, and we hope for the community. So check that out, and again, give us feedback. So on the site, what's being worked on? Remember, Pantheon.Plus is not where we expect it to be by the time Pantheon comes out. We expect to have so many more features that make this site a useful community tool for anyone who wants to be here. So I'm so excited to say, as of listening to this, articles are live. Yes, this is not a test, nor is it a Devil's Night joke. As our Friday night into Saturday morning, our article system is now live. You can access writing an article by logging on to Pantheon.Plus, and then in the drop-down hamburger menu, click My Articles, and you can begin to do your thing. All articles will need approval to be posted, and they can be sent back for revisions by the editors to the site. We have 0 issues with you linking your social media within the article or to other projects you may be working on. So feel free to advertise your passion projects as long as they're appropriate, of course. We think that this will allow many people within the community to submit all kinds of columns, articles, fan fiction, guides, and more as we continue to evolve the tool and add more and more features. So this is only Articles 1.0. If you see bugs, which there will be, please report them, as we expect we'll probably need to change some stuff and just basically fix up some stuff to improve the overall user experience and fix any little issues that we may find. So I'm just really hyped to say this is done. It's been a long time that we've been talking about this. At this moment, until the launch of Articles, everything on Pantheon.Plus has been video content creators. I think that Articles opens the door for so many more people in the community to get their voice out there, to be creative. And like I said, with fan fiction, in guides, opinion articles, I'm just really excited, and I hope this takes off, and I hope you guys will let us know if you're having any problems with it. We want to see a lot of activity and see the community really rocking and rolling in this and coming together, so it should be really good.
Yeah, there's actually 3 articles up already. I was just checking it out this morning. Drac is there with his 3 articles. He's the lead writer for Pantheon.Plus, and he is already cranking them out. He's got an article up about top 5 classes in any MMOs, and he collaborates with Tech Ninja and JG Piedra for that article. He's got an article with the patch notes from the dev stream last night, or from a couple nights ago, earlier this week. And then he's got an article about his tabletop experience doing a Pathfinder playthrough with some folks in the community. So it's already tons of stuff to read there. Go check it out. Leave a thumbs up and leave a comment, just so we know that you've seen it. And yeah, it's gonna explode.
Yeah, we're really excited about this again, because it's, I say this a lot, but it's not, Pantheon.Plus is not just minus Theric and Drac, right? Like, we want the community to be able to leverage the tool. And until now, it's been hard, because if you don't have video editing software, if you don't have a YouTube account, you don't know how to do certain things. It was hard. We get it. Yeah. This should open the door to quite a bit. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, you can reach out to me anytime on any social media, Discord. I'm always around to try to help. I don't know how many articles I'm going to write, but I'll probably put some stuff out there, and it's really nice for putting out like little news updates, like patch notes, like Drac did. So, really excited, but I know Drac's always there to help too. So reach out. So yeah, we don't stop there. We're never going to stop. It's always going to be what's next. So I'm not going to give any dates. It's probably going to be a couple months, but look for a complete overhaul of the class and races page next on our list. And after that, we're going to begin work on some interesting ideas for custom forums that are going to tie into the site content, and then have communities. I don't want to say too much here, but have the ability for individual communities within Pantheon+ community, as confusing as that sounds, to be able to have their own resources to use for their own group. So it's a ways off, but that's our pipeline right now. We're going to continue to fix any bugs we find in articles. We'll probably do little, graphical changes to things that we like, change out logos, clean stuff up. But at the same time, like I said, look for class and races pages to get a pretty big upgrade coming up here very soon. And then we're just going to keep on plugging away. If there's certain features you want to see eventually, let us know.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, Theric, that's it for the Pantheon.Plus news, but big news this week. And I really look forward to seeing anyone out there submit some opinion articles.
Sit back and relax. It's time for The Lore You Know. Okay, so as you heard in the new bumper, we have a new mini segment of the Rewind, and this isn't going to take a long time. It's called The Lore You Know. And the reason I decided to try this out is because we got some comments in the community, and people were requesting, can you just help us out, a little with a little lore nugget here and there, a little FYI. And I thought that's a good idea, because Pantheon's lore is extensive and it can be challenging to get a handle on, especially for those of you who are new to following the game. So the idea here is to try to make it a little more accessible. And each week I'll just take a couple minutes, give you a brief overview of a little piece of lore so you can follow along, and we can just sort of do it one thing at a time, piece it together. And this show's about community, and that's why this segment's not going to be too long, because it's just me giving you some information. So where do we begin with Pantheon's lore? That's not an easy task, hence the impetus for this section. But let's start somewhere. And so here's a fun fact. Did you know that the planet known as Terminus, which is home to the 9 races in Pantheon, wasn't actually always called Terminus? In fact, it's had several other names, believe it or not. And before the first race arrived, it was known as Nistarok. And that was during like when the Rainborn Dragons were, King of the Hill, and they were around, and it was their planet basically. But before that, it actually has even a more ancient name, which is called Avazul. And this was the name given to the planet, and it's still referred to by some of the native races of the planet. But it's not the last name. The oldest name for the planet is actually Noah, and we don't actually know much about the origins of that name. Jan Gerhardt talked about it in the a dev stream quite a while ago when they were talking about the Spriggan. He said, the Spriggan, who are one of the oldest races on Terminus, still refer to the planet as Noah. So there you go. If you thought Terminus was old, you're only a little bit right. It's much older than maybe some people think, and that's the lore you know. And so with that, Minus, you take us into the next section. Let's check the mail.
Here's the mail, it never fails. It makes me wanna wag my tail. When it gets here, I just yell, mail! We're getting sued. Well, with that song, that means we're in the mailbox. So let's start with JJ. He says, MMOs like EverQuest had items that stuck with you through the entirety of the game, or at least most of it. Things like Journeyman's Boots, Circle of Shadows, Amulet of Necropotence, etc. Do you think Pantheon should have similar items? And if so, what kind of items do you want to see? So Theric, what do you think?
Yeah, you know what? Those are what I call signature items. I think it's interesting when you have ones that serve a very specific function. We're not talking necessarily about stats or anything like that. It's often they have unique abilities. But when they do have stats and abilities that make, have a power factor attached to them, what's interesting about them is that you have to sacrifice stats for the function to work when you've got them equipped. So, I think that's one of the reasons that they stick around forever. They never really get, they never become obsolete because you've got this ability that isn't tied to just statistical power. And I think that's what gives them their iconic status. So I do hope we see a lot of these in Pantheon. I talked about a minute ago, the dev stream where they talked about the Spriggan. There was a weapon we saw in there, a druid weapon, or I'm assuming druid, but it's a Spriggan staff called the Arm of the Emerald Sky. And we don't know anything about it in terms of stats or stuff like that, but you could see that being one of those like signature items if it's got that unique ability, or maybe if it's just an appearance. But what do you think?
I love like things like Journeyman Boots. Like I had them on every character, right? They sat in my inventory. I right click them. So-and-so feels faster. Spams the chat. I love things like that. Amulet of Necropotence turning into a skeleton. Things like that. They're not game breaking, and there's something that's useful. You would never pass up getting a Spirit of the Wolf to have Journeyman Boots because they weren't as fast. If you were a bard, you'd still do your run song. But if you weren't, or you didn't have the opportunity to do those things, Journeyman Boots were a nice little, okay, well, I'm a little faster. Things like that add little momentary buffs on you, or lower level buffs, or change your appearance. I love those things, and they can have a life forever. So I think those are really important items to have in the game, for sure.
Nice, yeah.
Gulu Gulu says, outside of crowd control, what other types of support would you like to see in the future? I'll start with this one. For me, that's a difficult question to answer because as soon as I think of crowd control and support, I think of them as two different things. Crowd control is root, mez, stun, that kind of thing. Whereas I see support being like, how do I make my team stronger and how do I make the enemy weaker? Debuffing, buffing, bards would be a class that should be great at that, right? So, enchanters giving mana back to people, things like that. I think that support to me should mainly be about how do I make people around me better and how do I make the enemies worse? So what about you?
Yeah, it's a good one. And it's tough to sort of think outside the box sometimes because we've got we've got very clear definitions of what support looks like or crowd control. I'm going to steal a response from Discord because I thought it was a good, creative, and a cool idea to sort of, to get unique with this. Look at the unique features of Pantheon. Look at some of the unique abilities and climbing, as being something that's been part of their development process. What if we had a class that had some abilities to support climbing, right? Make it easier. Give you a temporary, make it so it doesn't drain your endurance for X number of seconds, that kind of thing. Or protected you, put a barrier around you while you were climbing so you couldn't be knocked off by a mob or by whatever. I think of it like as a Sherpa sort of type of skill where it's something that helps you, facilitates you as a being able to climb to certain heights. I think that's a cool idea, and it's not necessarily a combat thing, but it could be a combat thing too. So, if you think outside the box a little bit, that's maybe something I would do. And I can't remember who said it in a Discord, but kudos to you.
Well, let's just say I have no idea what a Sherpa is. So Tech Ninja says, what kind of aggressive encounters do you think we'll see on the Y-axis? I'm laughing and coughing at the same time. It's phenomenal.
You're dying. I think you're dying.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So what do you think it should look like and feel like? Should a spider follow you up? Would a bat bite you when you climb? What kinds of spells or melee attacks should be able to get you back to the vertical plane? Joppa's talked a lot about this, right? Like a lot. Do you want to start?
Sure. Yeah, he has talked about it, and there's definitely one of those technically challenging things that I think they have to work with. It's going to be interesting to see what approach they do take, and I think sometimes it might be easier. And this is just sort of me, talking as a non-technical person, but maybe it would be easier to just manipulate the surfaces to some extent, right? What if a monster, if you're fighting something, and instead of having the ability to target you and hit you from range while you're climbing, what if they could change the surface to make it suddenly slippery? Or, you're fighting some sort of gargantuan behemoth, they stomp the ground and it shakes you off the wall. So when I think of like aggressive encounters involving the vertical axis, that's what I'm thinking of, stuff like that, to maybe take it from a different angle. What do you think?
I think it's actually a lot more simple than I think most people are thinking. I think when it comes to any humanoid character, you just have them have some sort of ranged ability, whether it's throwing rocks or, because you could generically do that, right? Like you're fighting in an area and it's, there's gravel, they reach down, they start throwing rocks at you. Maybe if it's in a snowy area, they're throwing snowballs at you or snow or ice at you or something. And then, for casters or like actual ranged people, they have guns, bows, spells. That's pretty easy. What it gets into where it's a little more difficult is some of the wildlife. For a thing like a bat, do we want it to fly up and attack you just on the plane? Do we want it to shriek at you and knock you down? How does a bear do something? A bear doesn't have a ranged attack. Can it run into a wall like you suggested? So it's there's interesting pieces about that. But I think that for the most part, humanoids are a pretty easy fix. I think that, again, it's going to be the wildlife. You have to think about how that's going to work. But if we're able to climb, it can't be something that's super cheesy and we just get out of the danger every time we do it. So it definitely you need to be ripped off the wall for sure. Yeah.
And I just say, I don't want to play on a PvP server, but I definitely want to be able to pick up snowballs and chuck them at you while you're climbing up the walls so I can knock you off. That's that, man. I got to have that. Put that in the game VR.
They had a snowball item that you could keep in your inventory in WoW. And it didn't do anything, but you could target someone and throw it, and their character would physically get hit by it. They wouldn't move their feet, but you'd see them get hit in the head, and their head would back up, and you'd see the snowball explode off of them. And there were times people would mostly get them during the Christmas events and stuff. And you'd go into cities, and everyone's just pelting each other with snowballs. It's hilarious.
How fun is that?
That's really fun. And finally, Lucille says, what are your thoughts on the whole raids having variable dispositions to make it a different experience between respawns? Okay. So raid bosses, in my opinion, if designed well, should not have variable dispositions. Now, if there's a way to offer a harder version, like WoW has normal, heroic, and legendary and mythic. If there's a way that when you summon a boss, you can summon it as a harder version or a higher level, however that may work, I'm okay with that higher level having a different disposition than the first level. But I don't think if a raid boss is properly designed, they should be hard, challenging. They should require coordination. I don't think you should go into it blind because I think there should be a lot involved in the fight. Now, as far as the trash and the mobs in between or mini bosses, heck yeah. All that stuff, I would love to see all that kind of thing. But I don't think the boss itself should be that variable unless you're purposely summoning a harder version of it.
That's interesting. Yeah, you took it. One of the things you said was the angle I was looking at it too from in terms of a raid zone. How many? So you think about the ability to change difficulty of a raid, right? So if you can set the number of mobs, the trash mobs, the mini bosses, that kind of stuff, before you get to the raid boss in the zone, as to what percentage of them have dispositions, I think that's interesting in terms of being able to vary the difficulty of a raid zone. So let's say 25% of the mobs will have a variable disposition. That's interesting. Now, what if you crank that up to 75%? Now you're talking about really making it more challenging. And we know with bosses, raid bosses, are going to have the dispositions. I think they're called manifestations, if I'm not mistaken, in terms of the way they've described it. So I think it's the same. They haven't talked extensively about those kinds of things yet. So we can get more details on that in the future, perhaps. But I kind of feel the same way about, it's a little tricky when you're putting the ultimate boss at the end of a raid with a really, you don't know what you're going to get. On the other hand, could also make it much more challenging. We'll see. And I think that's what you're saying is that, I want to be able to prepare for whatever manifestation that boss might have. But I think looking at it from a zone-wide perspective, I think it's interesting when you think about altering the number of dispositions that mobs might or might not have. So it's a great question.
Yep. Well, that's it for the mailbox, and that is it for today's episode of Pantheon.Plus Rewind. Thank you to everybody who's listening. As always, 30 episodes. Congratulations, Theric. It's been a crazy run here, and we'll keep going.
Yeah.
Let's get to 40 and then 50, and who knows?
Congrats to you, my friend.
Well, you've put this all together, so you are the mastermind of the Rewind for sure. So everybody, thank you so much for checking us out today. As always, you can download this on iTunes or Spotify, and we hope we see you next week.
Cheers, everyone.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Pantheon.Plus Rewind. Be sure to follow Minus and all Pantheon.Plus related content on Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube under the name Pantheon.Plus. Also, be sure to follow Theric at PantheonTheric on Twitter. Keep up to date on all Pantheon Rise of the Fallen information on www.Pantheon.Plus, the definitive source for all media of Pantheon. Until next time.